As we head into 2019, you may look back and think about how much has changed, not just in the past year, but in your life. And it's not just you. America's population, our culture, it is all changing. In the first of our three-part series, correspondent Doug McKelway looks at how the changes could affect everything from the U.S. economy to politics.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
A few months after President Kennedy preached about civic duty, Virginia Senator Harry F. Byrd found the new president was practicing something else. Byrd analyzed 25 of JFK's first communications to Congress and found 175 requests for increased government spending. 58 years later, $21 trillion in debt and saddled with expensive entitlements, the U.S. is facing a demographic crisis that JFK could not have imagined. A fertility rate of 1.8%. That means the U.S. is not producing enough to sustain its population.
We do see fertility rates going down, not just here in this country, but in much of Western Europe, other parts of the world. And that becomes a problem when you're relying upon younger generations to pay for many of the social programs of older generations, of which there are now more people.
The reason behind these demographic changes are complicated.
One of the reasons people have fewer children is because they're unsure about the future. They're unsure about the costs of raising those children, especially the cost of education, and the student loan debt is a huge crisis that everybody knows about.
In her book, Men on Strike, forensic psychologist Helen Smith argues that young men's resistance to marriage is a rational response to today's culture.
Men have gone on strike because they feel like the incentives are just not there for them anymore. The risks of marriage and a lot of things for men today are very high, and the rewards for men are very low.
Others argue declining fertility rates are the result of women's success, their choices to pursue careers earlier, bear children later, oftentimes on their own, without husbands or biological fathers.
Women are in a position today to be able to educate their own children, pay for the medical care, house their children, shelter them. There is not as much of a need for them to have a partner.
At the other end of the economic spectrum, many poor single mothers rely heavily on government as provider. In Kennedy's time, such dependence may have been shunned. Today, many embrace it.
We saw that in the Obama administration with the life of Julia. And at each stage, there was the government to provide assistance with children or assistance with housing or assistance with education.
The U.S. is compensating for lower fertility rates with another demographic change, an increased reliance on immigration.
On the case of the right, they want people to work cheaply, more cheaply than in native-born citizens. And on the left, they want a further argument or an agenda for big government.
These demographic changes help to partly explain the resurgence of socialism in the United States. A Gallup poll from August found that young adult Americans are more positive about socialism, 51%, than they are about capitalism, 45%. That's a 12-point swing in only 2 years. Brett?
Doug, thanks. Part 2 tomorrow. Up next.